All right, Aja,
Hi.
we are recording.
Okay.
So I
Can
just
you
want
hear?
to thank you, first of all, Aja, for allowing me to encroach upon your day, right? You're home with your two kids, and we're going to jump into all that good stuff, the media.
Yeah. I
But I
think
just want to thank you.
every meeting you have to put that disclaimer out there. I'm sorry for interrupting your day because
Yes.
everybody is at home with everybody.
Everybody's at home. The schedules are different. It used to be
Exactly.
where, okay, after 5, I know
Yeah.
them because they're getting off work, but now everybody's schedules are all over the place,
Exactly.
and you don't
Exactly.
know what situation someone's in, if they're home with their kids, if they're still working, if they're essential workers, what have
Exactly.
you just tread lightly these days,
Yes. Yes.
in this COVID-19 quarantine situation that we're in. But I do want to thank you so much. We've been following one another for a little bit now, right?
Okay.
And never having really interacted. And when I say following one another, I mean the ITK series, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, and Teach Your Own Kid.
Right.
So we've been connected for a little while via Instagram, but nothing more than I might see your posts with your daughter specifically, and just things like that. But we connected a little bit more in depth based on a post that I posted this week, and I just could not pass up the opportunity to jump on with you, Aja, to have a deeper discussion, to provide some value for both your audience as well as my audience in the kid community.
And I appreciate you interacting on that post too, because a lot of times when you respond to somebody's post, they don't necessarily have a follow-up question. And I was almost shocked when you asked me a follow-up question. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I just wanted to comment real quick. And you asked me a follow-up question, and it really, honestly, your question made me think, like,
Wow.
what have I really learned? So I'll let you get into that, but
oh, no, that is great.
I really appreciated you doing that because it really made me sit down and think, like, okay, let me really think about what have I learned about my kids in this whole learning process.
Yeah, and that's really where this discussion is going today. And you just mentioned it. The post that I posted the other day just was on Teach Your Own Kid on Instagram, just to give some context. I've been working on just trying to add value, trying to help parents as much as possible during this time when we, as parents, have been, in a sense, forced, for lack of a better term, to homeschool. So now parents who were accustomed to dropping their kids off at school, even if it was a half-day program, many were accustomed to dropping their kids off at school and being able to go to work or come home and do some work or things like that. And now, as parents, you all are fully responsible for the remainder of the school year for the most part, right? And even in Houston, you're located in Houston, Texas, and even in New Orleans, our school, we've had to make our parents aware that we'll be out for the remainder of the school year as far as the school building.
Exactly.
One of the things that sparked the post that I posted the other day was I was speaking to a parent last week concerning her son, and I've been working with her son all year, and I have not been able to figure out how to reach him directly. It's been very difficult. I mean, very good student. He has a great sense of humor. But I noticed that some things that she noticed, but I wasn't sure how to approach it. And she told me, she said, I'm noticing, and his dad is noticing now, he gets very, very anxious when put on the spot. He gets nervous, almost shaking. And that thing. So that provided insight for me that he wasn't on in the classroom. He wasn't just trying to avoid some of the things we wanted him to do. He truly has an issue with anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So that sparked me to begin to ask the question, what you learned about your kids during this quarantine, during this time when you are now homeschooling your kids, and you jumped in and said, tell the audience what your response was.
Well, this is my first time hearing about the situation with the young boy. I would also agree with that with my daughter, and she's only 3. My daughter is 3 years old.
Yeah.
And I can tell, like, what we're doing right now is learning a letter a day. Now, when we first went into this situation, this whole lockdown, I had a game plan. Let me tell you, I was like, we're going to do 4 letters a day. We're going to do 4 numbers a day. And like, I just was so aggressive. I was like, this is going to be fun, da, 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 da. And I quickly learned on the first day that it's too much. It was way too much material for her to learn. And she lost interest very, very quickly.
Okay.
I am actually a math professor at a community college here in Houston, and I'm used to working with adults. So I took my adult learning mentality and tried to put it on my daughter, like, okay, she's going to sit there and she's going to learn everything I'm teaching her. Oh, no. No. So I quickly had to like start getting online, start following some of your tips. I remember when I found you, I used to listen to your podcast while I was working out. And you know, sometimes when I listen to podcasts, I'm like, man, I wish I had a book so I can read it, so I can highlight everything. But I think they have like a little option where you can like put a little bookmark or something on something that you say. I think they have that in there. But I remember listening to some of your podcasts and just thinking, man, I need to hear that on repeat. So I remember always hitting that little 15-second back button to hear you say it.
Awesome.
But I mean, recently I haven't been able to listen to your podcast like I want to because of the situation that we're in, but they really are helpful. But I really had to get on the internet and start looking at ways to teach a 3-year-old because I was doing it completely wrong. And one thing that I discovered about her personality is that when she is able to do something, she will excel at it. Like, oh, you want me to write the letter R? I'm about to write the letter R.
All day.
But we recently, actually last week, we got to the letter S. She cannot write the letter S. And because she can't do it, she is going on to something else. She's getting completely distracted. Like she will literally say, I can't do it. And say, okay, let me just draw. I want to draw a playground. Like she wants to do other things besides, okay, well, let's just practice it. So I have to go to another type of technique to help her with things that when she reaches a roadblock of something that she doesn't know how to do, she doesn't want to do it at all. She's like, I don't even want to try that. And I can see that being a problem in the future with her learning. Like, you can't just be good at the things you're good at. You got to be willing to learn as well. So I have to teach her how to be a learner and not just, I just don't want you to show off the things that you know how to do. I want you to be willing to learn. And it's hard to kind of teach that to a 3-year-old. You got to find like little tricky ways to kind of teach that to a 3-year-old. So that's one thing that kind of stood out to me. That's something I learned about my daughter, you know, in this whole pandemic, like that I never realized before, I never knew before.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Oh, no. I also want to talk about what me and my husband have learned about our personalities as far as our kids learning. And me being an educator, and I think I mentioned this in the post, I am almost ashamed at how much I was not involved in my daughter's learning.
Wow.
I literally, and I know this, I have friends, I have family members that are educators, and the main thing that they tell me that they have problems with is the parents not being involved. Like, we teach them, but then they go home and they don't reinforce it. I didn't even know. I'm like,
you are the culprit. You're the culprit.
Like, my mind is blown because I'm like, how can I be an educator and not reinforce these things that she's learning at school? I'm part of the problem, you know?
So tell us how is it that a math professor at a university, at a college, how is it that, and a 2-parent household?
Right, exactly.
Tell us, how is it that could happen? Because
I think
hard on one another.
I think because we're both so driven in our careers. And I really think in the Black community, I don't want to make this a black and white issue, but in the Black community, we were taught so much to make sure you have yourself together, push yourself, get your degrees, get your career, do this, do that. Like, we were pushed so hard in our careers that that's where we are right now. Like, it's like, I am so career driven. Like, I put my all into my career. My husband puts his all into his career. And it's just kind of like, when we drop our kids off at the daycare, we trust that the daycare is doing their job. You know, we trust that they're learning what they need to learn. And one thing that my husband told me, and then it just made it click. Like, my husband told me, like, after about the 3rd week, my daughter learned she can write her name now. And my husband was like, she's learning more from you than she is from the daycare. And I was like, wait a minute, how do you know what she was learning from the daycare?
Okay.
Have we ever asked? Like, and then both of us kind of got quiet. Like, we literally have never asked her, like, what letters can you write? What numbers do you know? We've never asked. So how do we know what the daycare was teaching? And it's like, that's the part where I'm like slapping my hand, like, shame on you, mommy, for not, when she comes home, like, okay, what letter did you learn today? Let's practice. Show me how you wrote that letter. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So
I mean, this is
like, and I mean, your whole platform on like teach your own kids, it's like, I think this situation that we have been forced into is going to make parents reevaluate how they educate their kids. They're going to reevaluate, what are you doing to push your kids? Now, when we get back in the streets, when we get off lockdown, when we get back in the schools, I feel like we're not going to be as aggressive as we are right now, but we're not going to be as silent as we were before.
Wow.
That's what I really feel like. Like, I may not be sitting up here taking an hour a day to teach my kid letters and stuff, but when she goes back to school, I guarantee you, when she comes home, we're going to take about 10, 15 minutes to go over what you learned. Show me what you did, you know? Or when we're in the kitchen or watching TV, if I see something that matches what she learned in school, I can kind of match those things together. I wasn't doing that before. And I'm an educator.
It's so much. You have, I'm done. We're going to just shut down the conversation because
I'm telling you.
Aja, this is so important. You've dropped so many nuggets. I want to try to go okay, because I love the passion. I love the excitement. I want to try to go back just a little bit. We're going to back up. You said you realized that you were doing it wrong. You said that when you started approaching this quarantine, this homeschooling, you were doing it wrong. From what perspective?
I know. And I
give our parents an idea.
Negative, because anything you're doing should be like a added, you know, I don't, and maybe I should have used that word that I was doing it wrong, but I think I was a little bit too aggressive and my expectations were too high. Instead of, let me learn the pace of my daughter. You know, let me figure out what it really takes for her to learn this material. And I actually took some time to talk to my cousin who actually works at a daycare in Florida. And she was saying at the daycare, they go through a letter a week. And I was trying to go through 4 in a day. I was like, you will learn your name by the end of the day. You will do it today. So the routine that we have now, and I think I also said this in the post that I put on your on Instagram, our routine now, like our learning sessions are literally no longer than 30 minutes.
Wow.
And she learns. You know, it doesn't have to be, in my mind, I'm like, my classes are 3 hours long at the community college. So I'm like, we're going to sit here for at least 2 hours. You know?
Ambitious.
Until we get it.
Ambitious.
But literally, if I just take 30 minutes and like we go through the whole learning, like let me draw it, then you draw it. Let's hold hands and draw it. Let's watch a video. Let's talk about things that start with this letter. Like we go through this whole routine in like 30 minutes. Because after about 30 minutes, she's like, okay, I'm ready to go do something else anyway at 3 years old. But those
Absolutely.
30 minutes are so valuable because the next day before we start, we review what we did the day before. And she knows everything that she learned the day before. And I'm just like, that's all it took. And I'm sitting up here trying to like
Reinvent the wheel
make,
and start
yeah,
from scratch.
trying to make her.
So what do you say to the parent who says, well, she's an educator? Of course, you're going to quickly realize where you're going wrong. You're going to quickly be able to tweak the whole situation, and you're going to quickly be able to make that pivot, make the changes necessary because she's a professor, she's an educator. What do you say to those parents?
I'll say, what I will say is I can understand if you're not an educator, how this whole situation can seem intimidating. Because what I have been doing is on my Instagram page, ITK series, and on my personal page, MSAIC54, on both of those pages, I have been trying to post everything that I'm doing with my daughter to give somebody a little bit of motivation. Because every time I try to talk about, the learning process that I'm going through with my daughter, some people are just kind of like, oh, I ain't got time to do all that. Like, I ain't got time. I'm like, no, you literally have time. You really do. Because it doesn't take that much time.
Yes.
Like, if you feel like you don't have enough time, just carve out 15 minutes. Because if you carve out 15 minutes, then once you get the kid into learning, they're going to want to know more.
Yeah.
And then after the 15 minutes, let them explore more on the tablet. Like, okay, I've started the process. Now you continue the process, and you're going to look up, and an hour would have passed by, and they're still up there drawing letters on their little tablet. Like,
Absolutely.
So just start the process. I don't want anybody that's not in education to feel intimidated about this process of teaching your kids, because it's really doable. I promise you it's doable. And I'm trying to make it look real easy. On social media, I'm just trying to like, look, this is what I did.
Simplify it.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, and what I find when I run into parents or who say something like that, who are like, okay, well, as an educator, it's one thing, but I'm not an educator. And I always say, well, at one point you weren't a parent either.
Yeah. And we learned that. Yeah,
you figured it out. You didn't have anybody to give you a rule book and say, hey, this is how you have to make decisions. This is what's going to work best for your family. So it's a matter of, okay, you are your child's first teacher.
Yeah.
Like you are automatically that child's parent.
Exactly.
So certain things that just have to be done. So you have to say, okay, if 15 minutes. And that's the thing. It is doable. There's no exact science to it. There's no perfect way. None of us, even those of us that are trained teachers, that are trained in education, we still do a lot of trial and error because there is no one size fits all situation. So saying that giving hope to say, you think you don't have time, but if you just figure out, the 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, take those 15 minutes at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day or during lunch time, and take those minutes and do something. What I hear you saying is intentional.
Intentional,
Something intentional. And then it's going to morph into something, it's going to morph automatically through.
And it makes me think about also, like, it's a learning process. Like, the first time I ever taught in a classroom, I sucked. Like,
me too.
I had to learn how to be an educator. I had to learn how to listen to my students. I had to learn. And when you're trying to teach your child, it's a learning process. The first week or two is probably going to be like, man, you and your kid are going to go like this. Y'all going to go back and forth probably the first week. Because I know the first day, I had to change my whole routine at the house, because the first day, we were in pajama mode. Like, let's put on our PJ, kept our PJs on all day. And I tried to teach her something. And my daughter at 3 years old literally was like, Mommy, let's just watch TV. Like, what are you doing?
This is confusing.
What's going on here? I had to create a routine where we get up and we literally put on some different type of clothes, there's an area in our house, our dining room area looks like a school now.
Okay.
And when she walks into that area, she goes into school mode. She knows this is the place where I learn.
Yeah.
And when we go into the living room or we go upstairs to the little movie room or whatever,
this is where we watch movies.
This is the place where I can have fun.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you have to, and I didn't know that at first. Like I had to learn that kind of stuff. So it's just, I feel like any parent that feels like I can't be an educator to my child, just know that it's a learning curve that you have to go through. Like, and it's okay. We're kind of put in a situation where we're almost forced to push ourselves to be educators now. So, I mean, take it as a challenge. Just take it as a challenge and know that you're not going to be perfect at it at first. Because me, as an educator, I was not perfect at first with my own daughter. And I thought I knew her and I knew the way she learned. And I just, it was not good the first couple of days. And then it's kind of like I started changing, you know, and I started developing. And any parent can do that. I promise.
Any parent can do it. Can you tell us a little bit about what you jumped just a little bit just now with changing clothes, and those are some of the things that I've also been putting out there on the Teach Your Own Kid platform, is that it may seem extra, you know, it may seem extra, even with our school and you know, with the school that my husband and I have, our kids were already working from home on Fridays.
Okay.
When all of this happened, we added the Zoom component, the morning for our morning meeting, and they thought it was a little bit strange that I said you have to have on your Hype Academy top, which is the name of our school. I didn't care that they put the whole uniform on, but to have on your top. And ended up having to say, you can't be in bed. You've got to be in a chair at a table. Your lights have to be on. Just things like that. Because
what grade? What age group is this? What grade?
These are 4th through 12th graders.
Okay, 4th through 12th.
These are 4th through 12th graders.
You are teaching them early on how your outer appearance can dictate your mental and how you do things.
100%.
So I don't go to work in PJs, you know. So when I'm at home and I'm really trying to concentrate and get work done, for me, mentally it helps if I put on some attire that says I am going to work. Okay,
absolutely.
This is my work clothes. So I mean,
even more for kids, even more for kids. Yeah.
Part of me is like, you know, you got to learn your family and learn how your family operates, because maybe there's a family out there that can operate in pajamas. You know, you got to know your family. But I know for our family, I got the whole house. Even my husband, he's an engineer. So he has to really work from 7 to 4 o'clock. He has to literally be in front of a computer working. And he said changing into regular clothes helped him, because he saw me doing it and he was like, you know what? Let me change this. So he gets up in the morning, he puts on real clothes and he comes to his office. So our whole house is on that routine. But you got to find what works for your family. I know for us, when we put on clothes, it changes the whole game for us. And it really separates the weekday from the weekend. Yes. You can really walk into our house and tell when it's the weekend, because on the weekend we chill. We wear pajamas, we watch Netflix all day. They play, they do this. And during the week, we got school, we got, a routine going, but on the weekend, they know we can relax a little bit. So it helps us to not have because I don't know how long we're going to be on this lockdown, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's the scary part, that there's no end game to this. So you have to do something that's going to help you mentally get through this. And I know for us, that routine has helped us mentally to make sure that we know the weekend from the weekday. Yeah, we know when it's time to work and it's time to play. And if we have to be in this thing for months, then we'll be okay.
Yeah. Do you believe, and there are some, of course, like we mentioned, that many of our schools our kids will not be going back into school buildings.
Mm-hmm.
How do you believe, I know that your kids are young, you have a 1-year-old son,
Yes.
and you have your 3-year-old daughter,
Right.
who was in daycare, correct? Were they both in daycare?
They're both in daycare. They were both in daycare. And I mean, the daycare is technically open, but they are very, very strict about the kids that can go in there. So if your kid has a runny nose or a cough, which my kids always have runny nose and coughing, they are 1 and 3, so they always
Yes.
So we're just not even going to risk it right now until we know exactly what's going on. But they probably couldn't get in there anyway with these runny noses and coughs. But what was the question? I'm sorry. Question.
That's okay. That's okay. So my question is, how do you believe this will impact your kids down the line in the next 3 to 6 months, having been homeschooled? How do you think that's going to impact them?
I think every parent needs to understand that this is a mental thing for your kids as well. Like, my daughter's only 3, and she can feel that, man, why are we in the house every single day? And then last Saturday, just a real quick story, my husband had to go to Lowe's to get some mulch for the yard. And I was like, well, this is the way we can get out the house. We'll just ride in the car with him and go and get the mulch. And we went to the Lowe's. Everybody had their face masks on, and my daughter was terrified. Wow. She literally felt that something was not right. And she's crying in the car. Dada, don't go in there. Don't go in there. Let's all just go home. Let's all just go home. Like, she was telling all, let's just go home. So she knows that something is going on in the world. And she actually said it today. She said, there's a virus at our school. And I mean, your kids, they're young, but they are aware that something is not right. They are aware that we are all in the house for some particular reason. And I think we need to be aware of that and try to be, I don't know, I have to do more research on how I'm going to help my kids mentally get through this, because they're suffering too. They're not around kids their age. Yes. They're around us all day. I was reading this one article talking about how parents have to literally be their kids' playmate now, because there's a learning curve with having playmates. Like, at the daycare, when they're playing with other kids their age, they're learning. They're going through some type of learning process, and that has been eliminated now. So it's kind of like, thank God they have each other. I can't imagine, the single child homes, the parents that have just one child in the home, like they're not being around anybody their age.
My sister.
It's very
My sister is going through that. She and her husband are in the Houston, Katy area as well. And my niece is 4, and she's an only child. And we get pictures every day of them having adventures.
Right. Yeah.
So
Zoom. The kids are going to start having Zoom calls now to interact with people their age. Like, my daughter knows how to FaceTime now. Like, she tries to FaceTime some of her little kids and stuff. But we definitely, I think the parents are going through a mental struggle and adjustment, but realize that the kids are also. And I can't imagine, like I said, there's no end game. And I think that's the part that really messes with you, is that there's no end game to this. We don't know what's going to happen. Next. We're Texas is supposed to be off lockdown next week. But we don't know. What if it spikes again? What if the death spikes again and we're back on lockdown? Like, we don't know what's happening.
Yeah. So, but I appreciate. I could just go on and on.
I know, me too.
it's such a great opportunity just to hear from. I love to hear from parents who are in the trenches, because sometimes as educators, and just speaking from the aspect of teaching kids, sometimes we can kind of find ourselves in a bubble, and we're constantly saying, you should. Yeah. Hear from a parent who's saying, I should have.
Yeah.
I wish I had. And now
Yeah.
I see it differently, and I'm doing some things differently. So as we wrap up our conversation, I want to ask you if you. I definitely want to make sure that both the people that I add value to, my those that follow me on Instagram, those that follow me on Facebook, I want to make sure that they know how to find you. So I want to ask you to give out that information. Where can we find you?
Okay, so the It's Time Kids is ITK series. ITK series. That's the Instagram page. And that's my child development series that I'm working on. And then my personal page is MSAIC54. And that's basically my math professor page. You know, I try to put all the math stuff on there and like more of my personal stuff on there. And then the ITK series is more of like the brand. So you can find me at either one of those platforms. I appreciate this conversation because conversations outside of the home, like I love that we're connecting at the home, but having adult conversations outside of the home are helpful too. And just to hear, I mean, you know, you don't want to vent or anything like that, but sometimes you need to just let some of this out. Like, this is how I'm feeling. This is what we're going through. And, you know, just hearing advice from other people, professionals like yourself that deal with children every day, and that's your career. You know, we need to hear from you right now. Like, we really need to hear from you, because I know there's a lot of parents at home just like, what are we going to do with these kids?
What in the world? Yes.
What in the world?
What in the world? That is so true. Thank you so much. Look, I want to, the last thing I just want to give the parents that are listening, if you have to give a word of advice during this COVID-19 quarantine, all that we've discussed, what would be your word of advice to those that are homeschooling their kids?
My word of advice would be, don't put too much pressure on yourself, because anything that you can do is going to be a plus. Don't feel like you have to turn into, I am teacher, Like, you don't have to be perfection. Anything that you can provide for your kids to help them learn something, even if it's just one thing a day, is going to add value to your child. Because I feel like a lot of times, just like with working out, if you feel like you don't have an hour to work out, a lot of times we don't do it. But if you get on the treadmill for 10 minutes, that's better than nothing. So you got to think about your teaching your child in the same way. Just do one thing. And you never know, by the end of this, you may be looking at a different career. I may be a teacher now.
I don't know how they're going to feel like that, but thank you so much. And it's
no problem.
Ajai Simmons out of Houston, Texas.
Yes.
Is a math professor who is now teaching her own kids.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Ajai, for spending some time with me. I look forward to speaking with you again.
Okay, thank you.